All right. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Bridge to Brilliance. My name is Woodrow Wilson Wagner, and it's my privilege to serve as the Director of Institution Programs here at UHB, as well as a lecturer of political science and communication. A special welcome to all of our UHB students, faculty, and staff joining us today. It's such a unique way to bring all of these groups together, but then to bring them together with another very important group, which is our community and our industry leaders. If you've been to Bridge to Brilliance before, you know we really pride ourselves in making those connections between students, industry professionals, faculty and industry professionals, and of course, staff and industry professionals, because I think all of us have the opportunity to grow professionally in whatever situation we're in here at UHB. Our special guest today, I'll introduce him more formally here in just a second, is Mr. Kenny French. But before I do, let me just tell you that I want you to feel free to ask questions during this. And you might have some very specific questions that you'd rather not say out loud. That's fine. You can type those in the chat. Please do that. But throughout this, if you'd like to raise your hand, you can certainly do that. And I know some of you like to turn on your cameras and talk directly. And then probably towards the end, we'll have more time for additional questions. But please, we want this to be as interactive and as engaging as possible. And I think as you start to listen to Kenny, you'll sense that he's a very engaging and interactive sort that will certainly welcome your feedback and your questions as well. So our guest today is indeed Mr. Kenny French. Some of you, I think, have gotten the chance to know Kenny in some professional capacity. He's been building his financial empire now for 30 some odd years here in Victoria, Texas. But just like many of you students, at one point, Kenny was a first-gen student, and he was trying to make ends meet. And he was trying to figure out how he was going to finish school and work in a job and pay tuition. But then all these years later, all that hard work, all that sacrifice, all that determination has paid off to get Kenny where he is today. And where is he today? Well, as you saw in the promo, this is a gentleman who's been regularly recognized as one of the top financial advisors by people like Barron's and Forbes and other national and international organizations. His excellence speak for itself, but I think his clients, if you've ever talked to any of Kenny's clients, will talk about another side to Kenny beyond the dollars and cents. That's about a person who very much cares about their welfare and the welfare of this community. When we think about what makes Victoria great, and why some of you students might want to make your home here after graduation, it's definitely people like Kenny French who make Victoria a wonderful place that it is. And I hope that after our conversation today, you might feel inspired enough to sit down with Kenny, talk with him. He loves to help mentor students. He loves to help people talk about various career paths. And I know he'll be a great resource for any of you who want to follow up with him. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know you didn't come for me. You came for the man of the hour, Mr. Kenny French. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over and switch our cameras here so you can get a good look at him. There he is in the picture. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see the full Kenny French and all of his glory. Kenny, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Really, really appreciate that you're with us today.
Well, thank you, Woodrow. It's an honor to talk with y'all today. You know, you talk about first-gen students. That's dear to my heart because I remember when I was one of those students. What I'd like to do is really just talk a little bit about my journey, and then maybe talk a little bit about what I do today. And then, as you said, we could open it up for some questions and see what maybe some of the questions that our audience has. How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic. Thank you, Kenny.
All right. Well, I got to tell you that I've always wanted to own my own business. And I really think the first experience I had was when I was quite young. I was 10 years old. I had a paper route and I delivered papers for the South Bend Tribune. And it was like having your own business because you went out and collected the money from the people that you delivered your paper to. I had a bill I had to pay every month for the number of papers that I got. And then what was left over was my profit. And I got to tell you, Woodrow, during those times when I was 10 and 11, I always had more money than my friends in my pocket. So I really liked that feeling of having that extra spending money. And the reason is I come from a very poor background. My father always had two jobs. And he was very hard worker. And you know, he just didn't have a large income. And I think what I inherited from my father was his work ethic. I remember what he would always tell me. He would always say that no one's ever going to give you anything. Everything that you get, you're going to have to earn. And I still believe that today, that you could outwork 80% of your competition. Now, the other 20%, you're going to have to work a little bit harder, but 80% of your competition that you can always outwork if you just outwork them. And I think that was probably the thing that I remember most about my father and I inherit from him. So I moved to Texas in 1977, and I was again first generation to go to college. I went to Kilgore. I had such good grades. I got into Kilgore Junior College, and I got a degree in oil and gas technology. After that, I went to work for an oil company, and again, it was a really good job that I had. I worked for that oil company for around 12 years. But during that time that I worked there, I just wasn't satisfied. I wanted to continue to grow. So I decided to go back to school and get a 4-year degree. So we lived about 35, 40 miles from Tarleton State University. So I'd come in from work, change, grab my books, drive 35 miles to the school. And I did that 4 nights a week, and got my degree in business from Tarleton State University, which I'm very grateful to the oil company because they paid for my degree. Now, also, my wife is probably, her name needs to be on that degree also, because she took care of the kids and, you know, really was very supportive so I could go on to get that degree. But as I was working for that oil company and after I got my degree, I just felt like I wasn't, I wanted to be more entrepreneurial. So I decided that I was going to go out and buy a company. So first company I thought I'd buy was buy into a franchise with McDonald's. And when I showed up to talk to them, they said, well, do you have about $250,000? And I said, no, sir, I don't. He goes, well, that's how much money you need to buy a franchise. So that was out. I went to Subway. That was a little bit cheaper, but that was around 30 to 50,000. Didn't have that kind of money also. So again, I kept looking and trying to find an opportunity. A friend of mine, who's a financial advisor here in Victoria, Robert Steed, lived across the street from me. And he introduced me to Edward Jones. And at that time, Edward Jones was kind of like a franchise. You picked your community, you went to that community, and you started your business. So I decided to come to Victoria. Teresa and I had came to a wedding here, and we really liked the community. So we decided to move from Snyder, Texas, which is up in West Texas, down to Victoria to start our business. And I remember the first check I got from Edward Jones, I made that much money when I was 19. And I was 32 with 3 children and a bride. So I knew that I had to go to work and work hard. So how we did build our business in those days is we went door to door introducing ourselves. And I glued a nickel on my business card. And I would go and knock on doors, and I would, if you were there, Woodrow, I'd give you my business card, have a nickel on it, and it would say Edward Jones, Kenny French at Edward Jones, and it had the nickel. And people would say, what is nickel? I said, I help people with their money. And that's how I started working with Edward Jones, going door to door, earning people's trust, working with them, helping with their investments. It's a whole different type of program to a business today. Back in those days, it was more transactional type of business that we did. And then today, it is more planning that takes place, which I'm very, very passionate about. So, you know, and today we can see more of the impact that we have. So today I help people build a financial plan and an investment plan for that financial plan. I got to tell y'all that you can really see the fruits of your labor, how you get to help people. Yesterday I had in my office a group from Guatemala. I manage their foundation. It's Father Dan Morales' foundation, and we are growing that foundation to send money to Guatemala to help build and help that orphanage that's there in Antigua. And it's so exciting and getting to be able to do that. So today, my role that I get is so fulfilling. But again, it's I think the work ethic that my dad helped me get was really what propelled me to where I am today. But I think about what I am today is I'm a money manager and a psychologist, right? And I'll talk a little bit about that. But the concepts are really kind of interesting. Is that I tell people all the time, and you had the quote, Woodrow, is that you need to save like a pessimist and invest like an optimist. So what does that really mean? When you save like a pessimist, you're saving because you know that you might have some bad times down the road. Things might change, but you want to put yourself in a position that you can navigate those difficult times. And then investing like an optimist is that people, when they think about investing, just investing in great companies that are innovative, that are developing, and despite all the negative news that we hear about companies, they are really changing the world. It hasn't been that long ago, 2007, when Apple took a phone and put a computer together, and think where we are today. Think about that. That hasn't been that long ago. And that's what I'm talking about, being optimistic about things that are coming down that are taking place. Well, just like this, I got to tell you, I was a partner at Edward Jones, and I got promoted to do some advanced training for financial advisors. And one of the reason that they looked at me is because this was back in 2011, 2012. I did 4 Zooms a month. I want y'all, we have 17,000 financial advisors. That was leading the firm in Zoom. I did 4 a month. What do you think? How many Zooms do you think we do at Edward Jones a day today? How many Zoom meetings we have? So think about, that's what I'm talking about, being optimistic, investing like an optimist, the things that are taking place that we're growing. So I look back on some of the things that we have and we do, and it's just that it's growing so much. But these are companies that are doing this. So when I think about investing, people always talk about the stock market, right? And what I would challenge all of you don't think of the stock market as the stock market. Think of it as individual companies. There's in the S&P 500, there's 500 companies. They're the best companies in the world. And they don't come to work every day to think about how they can lose money. They come to work every day to think about how they can innovate, how they can create products and lifestyle. I remember I saw a quote from the CEO of Microsoft. He was being asked about what was Microsoft's role in the world, and the CEO of Microsoft said, and I'm probably paraphrasing this a little bit, but he said Microsoft's role in the world is to create solutions for the world, is to help grow the economic pie. And by doing so, we're giving everyone opportunity to grow the economic pie. People get opportunity because the economic pie grows. And when you think about investing, that's what a lot of our companies that we invest in, that's what their motivation is to grow the economic pie and therefore help all of us when they grow the economic pie. So I say that really building wealth is kind of a lazy way, because what you do is you invest in the best companies in the world and they do all the work for you. But with investing, though, the thing you got to remember that everything that you do, doesn't matter what you do, but everything that you do has a cost. If you go and buy a car, if you take a vacation, you go out to dinner, you go to HEB, everything you do has a cost. And investing is no different. What are the costs to investing? Well, the cost to investing is that if you're in a 10 years, 2 years, you're going to love your financial advisor. 2 years, you're not even going to send him a Christmas card. Okay? And then 6 years are going to be average. But the cost of investing is putting up with those 2 years that you watch your investments go down. And what people do, what they do is when the markets go down, they look at the markets going down and not looking at this as 500 individual companies. Whenever I go see my son, I have to go by Lowe's. And every time I go by, back when the markets were down, Lowe's was down 28%. But Woodrow, every time I drove by that parking lot, it was full. Now, how is the stock is down 28%, but the parking lot is full? So my guess is that Lowe's is not losing 28% of the revenues, but their stock price has dropped. And so you've got to be, there's no shortcuts. There's no shortcuts, and being patient and building wealth over time is easy, but you have to be very, very patient. So remember to invest like an optimist, save like a pessimist, and be very patient. So I'd like to stop right there and see if there might be some questions that people have.
Yes, Kenny, they're pouring in, and we've got people on the chat, and then I had some students from class. They submitted some as well. So we'll just start going through some of these. So the first thing I want to go back to is Kenny French as that first generation college student. And there's so many people on the call right now, Kenny, who are working 2 or 3 jobs, trying to take 12 or 15 hours. Also, they're a caregiver for mom or dad. Then they've got other responsibilities. They've got about 5 or 6 hats they have to wear.
Yeah.
And I sense that, Kenny, when you began that journey, you were in a similar situation. And I'm wondering if you could first just talk about some of the significant obstacles you faced and while you were applying, while you were in college, while you were in that first year of community college, whatever. And then once you identify those obstacles, how do you transcend those obstacles? And if you can just try to be as specific as you can, said this student.
You know, I think about that because my guess is that student is that his friends or her friends are saying, why are you doing this? Why are you working so hard to get a degree? They really can't see what the future looks like. And probably I couldn't see what the future looked like, but I knew that I wanted something better. And I wanted to do something better. So I took a lot of how do I want to say this, Woodrow? Chatter from my friends. You know, they would tell me, why are you taking that? Why are you taking that English class or that composition class? In high school, they would tell me that. Right? And so my guess is that these students today that are wearing all these different hats are getting pressure from their peers and say, why don't you just quit school and get a job? Give up. That's what I think. But my guess is that you have to have the drive, the motivation to keep going. And I know it's hard, but what I would tell you too is be grateful. Gratitude is the number one thing, and always measure backwards. Where were you a year ago? Well, I'm a year later, I got 15 hours, right? I didn't have 15 hours credit last year. I am 20 hours closer to having that degree. And believe me, employers want to hire you. When they look at where you came from. So look at, and I hope I don't offend anybody, look at people that have had it easy and people that have had it tough. If you're the employer, who do you want to hire? I want to hire the tough ones. The ones that are grateful for the opportunity that they're getting. I hope that answers that, but don't let your peers pressure you. Keep going. Keep climbing that. You know, it's like the lady that swam the English Channel. You ever heard of that story?
Yes.
You know, she went down to the channel and she got all tarred up and, you know, they didn't have wetsuits back in those days. She swam halfway across and she figured she wasn't going to make it. So she swam back. Right? Keep swimming. Keep swimming.
Excellent.
I have so much respect for those students like that are continuing to swim.
If you don't mind telling us, what motivated you to keep swimming when there were probably some days you did not want to swim in college? What motivated you to keep going?
Well, I just wanted, I guess this probably is not the right answer, but I just wanted something better. I wanted to make sure that I wanted something better for me and my wife and my family. And as my dad said, nobody was going to give it to me. Right? So it was on Kenny French and Teresa French we both worked. She was a teacher, I worked, and it was good teamwork, right? But still I wanted something better. And again, I guess I was grateful for, as I look back on it, I was grateful for the opportunities that I got, but I think I made my own luck. And that's even more fulfilling.
Absolutely. Don't wait for somebody else to make the break for you. Make your own break. You often talk about, Kenny, about working harder than everybody else, right? And there's not always a medal at the end of that. It's not always like accolades, but you have to self-motivate at times. And that having that work ethic that your dad instilled in you, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. And you know, people talk about building wealth, but it's really, you build wealth for people so they can do what they want when they want and not have to worry.
Well
Right.
said.
And that's what we want. And that's personally. Personally too. You work hard to get that opportunity so you can do what you want when you want and not have to worry.
Well said. So Kenny, we've gotten some specific financial questions. Now, one thing, Kenny, I did tell a lot of folks about you is that you work with the Innovation Collective, and you and I sit on the Innovation Collective board, and we're constantly trying to nurture that sense of innovation. We have a lot of Innovation Collective events here, and we've had students and faculty and staff go to that as well. One of those students just wrote a question, Daniel, and he was talking to Carissa Winners last time about his business. But his question for you, Kenny, is when starting a small family business, is finding a financial investor positive or negative? And is it a financial investor considered a partner? How does the investor benefit from investing in a small business? So I think that's where Daniel's going in his direction.
No, I think, in fact, earlier today, Woodrow, I went to the small business or what is it, the S at U of H?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And I was so impressed with that group. And I learned a lot by going there. So if I was starting a business today, that would be my first stop. I would go to the college, go see those. They're like business. They're like consultants.
Right. And it's all free, Kenny.
That I was just getting to that. Where can you go and get a business consultant free? Right? Yeah. So that would be my first stop. And I would get my business going. And if then I would look to find a financial advisor to help me save like a pessimist and invest like an optimist. But I think the first steps is going to that center and getting a good business plan, because the main thing is that, you not only want to start a business, but you want to stay in business. It's about longevity.
Absolutely. Right? Do we have anyone from the center? Is Mark Martinez or Lindsay Young or any of y'all on the call today? Because we often have some of those. Then they're outstanding. They're such terrific folks. But
yeah,
if anybody is on the call, please feel free to type in the chat for Daniel and others. I can give the contact info, because again, this is a resource that a lot of us don't even know we have. And I can't emphasize enough, it is free. And the stuff that they're providing, as Kenny can probably tell you, some people charge a lot to give that kind of advice and analysis. But you, as our UHV students, are getting that opportunity free. So please, we'll put that in the chat and get people into contact. Another question for you, Kenny, is how did you get into investing? How did you get into it?
Well, I could say that I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up, and my grandfather would always talk to me about compounding, how compounding works. And it would always, it fascinated me. And so I decided to start investing, but I always, when I first started investing, that is when actually the 401k plan started. They started in like 1983, 1984. And every time I got a raise, I raised up the amount of money I was putting in my 401k. So that's where I really started. And back in those days, the interest rate was really high, so you would watch it grow. I mean, it just compounded and kept growing. And that's really where I kind of got interested in investing. But when it comes to what I do today is more about, it's fun to invest, but it's more fun to help people. to watch them retire early, go on a trip, help their children. So that's really self-rewarding. So that and how you do that is really by being a psychologist, keeping them invested. You know, when it's very difficult to stay invested when the markets are going up and down like they are.
So you mentioned that, and that might be a good little nugget, Kenny, for some of our business students who are on the call, and maybe even some of our business faculty. So did you have training in psychology? Did you take classes, or how did that come to you as you started realizing, hey, I've got to be a part-time psychologist here?
Yeah, well, Woodrow, I guess I would say that I'm a constant learner. I'm curious, and so I read a lot. One of the best books that I've ever read is called The Psychology of Money.
And who is the author of that, Kenny?
I thought that I brought it here. His last name is it's Housel, Morgan Housel. I believe it's spelled Housel. Best book that I've ever read. I wish I'd have read it. And it just talks about the psychology of money, and how it works and how people think. And it talks a little bit about careers too. You know, we all want to get out there and start a career and make the most. I'll tell you a story about my son. He probably get mad when I tell a story, but when I was taking him up he graduated from Texas Tech, and he was a junior, or starting his junior year, and we were driving up there, and I'll never forget what he told me. He says, "Dad, you know, I don't really need one of those high-paying jobs like you've got." I said, "Really?" I said, what do you think?" And he said, "Well, if I make $70,000-$80,000 a year, that'd be great." And I said, "Son, are those Texas Tech business graduates making $70,000-$80,000 a year when they graduate from college?" He goes, "I'm sure they are." I said, "Oh." He graduated in December of 2009. The world was unraveling. The markets were down. He went to work for Enterprise rental cars, making about $20,000 a year in May, and was happy to get the job. And as I look back on that, you know, every 10 years the world breaks. I mean, if you kind of look back on it, 2002 technology bubble, 2008 and 9, the financial crisis. We just went through another kind of COVID crisis, but I think that was good for him, Woodrow, to go through that. So now he appreciates the opportunities that he has. At the time, he wasn't too happy, but you know, I think that, you know, you have to be really patient, but yet he continued to work, and you know, it all worked out for him. He grew up to be a financial advisor now.
Excellent.
And runs a very good business.
Fantastic.
I don't know why I was going there.
Well, that's good. That's good to know, because you take those knocks, and those are the things that make you tougher, better. And I think that's a good story for our students, because our students, as I'm sure you did when you were in college, you have to take some of those, and you try to turn it into a teachable moment, a learning experience that I think inevitably makes you better, stronger, more resilient. And part of the bridge to brilliance, the R, is resiliency, right? So constantly looking for ways to be resilient. And sometimes it's that failure or that challenge or whatever you want to call it that leads to something more exciting for us down the road. We've got another question, Kenny, about, so someone said they're close to retirement. Is it too late to invest if you're too close to retirement?
No, not at all. Because think about this. When you first of all, I don't call it retirement. I call it the second half of your life. Okay. So when you enter the second half of your life, you could be in the second half of your life. Some people are in the second half of their life, 30, 40 years. So when you think about investing, it's not for just one or two. A two-person retirement could last 30 to 35 years. And what you pay today for goods and services are certainly going to be higher 30 years from now. So how are you going to keep up with that expense? Even if it just goes up, if inflation is 1 or 2% a year, that means it doubles every 20 years. So if you're living on 50 today, it's 100. And how do you keep up with that? Well, the best way to keep up with rising prices is own the companies that are raising the prices.
Excellent. Okay, Kenny, related kind of question is, how can you start investing on a fixed income? And I think a lot of us are dealing with, especially our students, and even me as staff and faculty, I'm trying to struggle with that as well. So what kind of tips do you have with that? Because it's easy to invest when you've got all this disposable income, but when things are a little bit more fixed and finite, what kind of thoughts do you have on that?
So there was a book written, again, I'm a book. The book was written, I don't remember the author, but it was How Smart Women Finish Rich was the name of the book. I read the book, and the author had a lady that said she didn't have enough income to save. So he said, okay, let's write down everything you spend in a day. So she stopped at Starbucks and got a nice coffee. So when he went through everything that she spent in a day, there was ways that she could reduce that and turn that into savings. And it ended up being a couple $1,000s a year. Well, at that time, this has been a long time ago, but that's what you could fund a traditional IRA back in those days. So if you think about a $2,000 investment, remember, it's about time. It's about saving like a pessimist and investing like an optimist. I bet if you wrote down everything that you do in a day and what you spend, actually, when I talk with my clients, Woodrow, about this, those that retire, I said, when you retire, your expenses are going to go down about 20%. They go, no way. I go, yeah, you don't realize how much money you spend in a day. You just don't go into work, driving, whatever the case may be. But I think that, again, it's about, making that first step. You can go out and get a good mutual fund and put $100 a month in it. And I promise you, if you do that for 2 or 3 years, you'll figure out a way to put more in it, because you'll say, man, that thing is really growing. What if I put $200 a month in?
So this question has come up a lot of different ways, and it's basically, if Kenny in 2024 could go back to Kenny 1980 or whatever, Kenny, and give him, as a college student, as a freshman in community college or wherever you were, Kenny, advice about finances, whether it be about checkbooks, whether it be about credit cards, whether it be just something you could go back and tell young Kenny, what kind of advice might that be? What would you be telling yourself?
Yeah, well, back in those days, credit was not as free as it is today. So I know that there's some obstacles with credit. There's a country western song said that, I found out that those credit cards don't run, they're not free, right? You have to pay it back. I would say that until I had a really, and that's what I did. I saved. Now, I spent everything I put in my 401k, I saved. The rest of my paycheck I used until I got married. But I would say that I wouldn't have changed that. I would, when I first get my job, you know, KJ and I, my son and I have talked to the athletes at Victoria of U of H, you know, all the juniors and seniors the last couple of years. And we talk about the first time you get your job, what's the first thing you do? You sign up for that 401k plan. That to me is what allowed me better choices later in life because of that of having that discipline to put money in there. And that came from my grandparents and parents to do that. But a lot of people don't have that kind of guidance. So you have to understand that you have to save. You got to stay out of debt and you have to save. So that's and that's what I did. But that's the guidance that, and you know, I went to when my kids were at Texas Tech, going to school, you know, we would go up and watch a football game. They had tents of people giving out credit cards.
Mm.
And I apologize to the students for those people that do that without any advice and guidance on how to use it. So it's not free money, and people get in trouble with that.
And that attitude, Kenny, of buy now, pay later. I mean, that's always been with us since economics began. And I'm wondering now, as you see the last 20 or 30 years, especially in 2024, are young people more vulnerable to that, where they're led to believe that they've got to have the fastest car, the newest car, the biggest house, the most bedrooms, and it seems to me, and maybe it was different for us when we were growing up, but it seems now that there's so many more temptations, and media and social media especially has exacerbated that and heightened that just click here, just buy here, just sign up now, right? There's no sense of consequence or regret. I'm just wondering how you're navigating all of that.
Well, I would say that I really believe that this, what you're calling Woodrow, the next gen, I think they're going to be better savers because they've watched their parents. You know, Steve Maxwell always says that, you know, what was it? Intelligence skips a generation. And so as we look at maybe some of their parents, they weren't good role models and they got themselves in debt. And now you got their kids going, oh man, I don't want to do that. Right. And I think that's going to, I think the next generation, these students that we have at UHB, I think they're going to be better money managers. And I don't hope I'm not living it, but because of what they've lived through and seen what their parents have done. And they're borrowing money to go to college. My guess is when they have children, they're not going to be borrowing money to send their kids to college. They're going to save and put their kids through college. So
excellent.
I really think that, you know, it skips a generation. Steve Maxwell talked about that one time. He said, you know, I'd heard that, you know, that intelligence skips a generation. And he said his son said, yeah, me and grandfather already had that talk.
Of course they did. Excellent.
So anyways, but I do believe in this generation, this next gen, as you call them. They're going to be, in my opinion, I think they'll be better money managers. You know, it's kind of interesting. Those credit card companies that were on the campuses back, that's when KJ was going to college. They would say, you need a credit card to have good credit. Well, they didn't say if you didn't pay the bill, you get bad credit.
Right.
They didn't tell you about the bad credit side.
Right.
So when you go to buy a house or buy a car, that bad credit comes back to haunt you.
Indeed.
Oh, we'll get you some good credit. It could end up as bad credit too.
All right, another one, Kenny, very specific question. Would a Roth IRA be a good way for most to invest, even though you cannot pull the funds until you're 59?
Yeah, so I struggle with this a little bit. I think the Roth IRA is a great investment vehicle. But remember, so if you have a choice between a Roth 401k plan and a traditional 401k plan, all right? Say I'm going to work for Edward Jones and they're offering me a 401k plan, Roth and traditional. So here's what you got to think about. It's all about compounding. So Woodrow, this is really easy math. So if I take a penny and I double it every day, at the end of 30 days, I have $3.5 million. I did this back when Roth and traditional IRAs first came out. Penny, double it every day. If you take a penny and take 30% out tax and then double it, because that's what happens with a Roth, you put in after tax money. So you've paid the tax before you get to, now the penny's only 0.7%. Now you're doubling 0.7 with 0.7 instead of 1 penny with 1 penny. If that makes sense. So at the end of 30 days, you in your Roth IRA, you might have 354,000. Well, I'd rather have 3.5 million and pay the tax on it and still be money ahead. Makes sense?
Yes. Very good. Even I understood it, Kenny, and I failed math. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. A question from an international student. If I'm an international student with a temporary work visa, should I invest in a 401k? Is it difficult to retire, or will there be penalties involved if I retire the money early? So I guess his special circumstance is that he's an international student with that temporary thing, and how might that affect it?
Yeah, you could still have your 401k plan, right? And if you didn't stay in this, savings is savings, right? I mean, it's savings is savings. If you have the opportunity to save, you should save. If you can add to a 401k plan, I think you should. You can transfer that I've transferred IRAs or retirement plans from foreign, Americans that have worked overseas. We just transferred their money back into the US. And Father, with the foundation I'm working on, we're going to be transferring money from Guatemala into US dollars into the foundation that we have here. So it's transferable. The key is not how you transfer it, it's how you save it. It's the savings that's important.
Excellent. Now, Kenny, you've traveled all around the United States, all over the place, and I assume all over the world, and you've seen a lot, but you've decided to make your home in Victoria, your family's home, for many, many decades now. So for those students out there who are thinking about Victoria and thinking about, is this going to be a place where I would like to live? Is this a place I'd like to work? Why do you think, at least in your own case, Victoria is a good place to work and live, regardless of what your major is after you graduate from UHV? Why might a person want to make Victoria their home?
Well, of course, now this might be a little bit, but I got to go into Houston last Friday and to see clients, and I was in Katy in the traffic. And I said to myself, I don't know how these people do this. I mean, it takes me 7 minutes or maybe 10 minutes if I stop at Cimarron to get from my house to my office. And, you think about your time. What is your time worth? All of us have, 1,440 minutes in a day? And what is your time worth? So first, I think about that. Moving to the city or places that you might have more things to do, but it takes you longer to get where you need to go. The other thing is that, you know, I remember, and I pick on my son too much, but when he left Victoria to go to Texas Tech, he was never coming back. Never. Why would anybody live in Victoria, Texas?
A few of us have said that, Kenny. A few of us on
Yeah.
this very call have said that.
Yeah. And now he is here raising his family. And I think that's, if you want to raise your family in a place, I think I can't think of any place better than Victoria. And today, Woodrow, I see it at the university. I see it with our leadership in the city. It's got a more of a growth mindset. I think we're doing things today. Having this bridge to brilliance is a way to, it's more of a growth mindset. And I've worked for corporations, oil company that didn't have a growth. It's miserable. It is miserable to work someplace that is not growing. And I think as you look at opportunities in Victoria, I was at that SBA center today, the Small Business Center, and I told them, I said, the reason why I'm here is I'm selfish. I want to look at the talent we have so we can start bringing that talent back to Victoria. You talk to business leaders in the community, they talk about we need work, we need a workforce, we need good workers. And if we can get our students to stay, we're going to attract more industry here, even better jobs. But I drive out there where KJ lives. I call it Millennialville. You drive down that neighborhood, there's kids running, playing with one another. You know, it's a great neighborhood. I don't know that you're letting your kids run down the street in Houston, Texas. Right?
Well said.
Yeah. I just think that if you're looking long term, having a career, having a family, I think it's pretty good.
I think some people, Kenny, get it in their head that they're not going to be able to make a good living in a place like Victoria, that they quote unquote have to go to Houston or San Antonio if they're going to make a good salary. But I think there's enough examples here of people like yourself and other business leaders who have made a tremendous amount of salary and success and whatever other measures you want to use. And so I think we've got to keep telling that story and keep sharing that message.
Woodrow, I had a business owner approach me Saturday night, and we talked a little bit. So I've done a little investigation on him, right? Looked at his company, and I went and looked at his company online. And I started flipping to the pictures. Oh my God, he had him and the other partner are older, but that his workforce are, you know, my guess is there's some UHD graduates in that group. It's a software company here in Victoria, Texas. You know, they just don't get enough. We just don't talk about them enough.
Well said. Well, Kenny, we're getting to the end. And before we do, I want to do a little bit of Kenny French, This Is Your Life. So there's a few things because we mentioned these in the promo, and I just want you to talk about the significance of these a little bit. There's, of course, we'll get Kenny's info, but how does one, Kenny, get on these prestigious lists? How do you get to be one of Barron's top advisors and Forbes best in state wealth and individuals? Because I have a feeling they're not handing out these things to everybody. So how do you get to that point in your life where you're on these kinds of lists?
Well, first of all, Woodrow, you're too kind, right? you're too kind. I think so. When you look at these best in state wealth advisor by Forbes, you know, I get more recognition from my clients by being best in state with Forbes, and then Barron's is more industry related. So we look at the industry Brilliance carries a lot more weight with us. But to me, it's, I guess it's really running a practice that is impacting people, and it's growing. When I look at the people that are on the Barron's list, most of them are from the city. Myself and one other person in Texas, one guy's from Texarkana, I'm from Victoria. Everybody else is from Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, the bigger cities. And so that's why I'm very proud of that little old Victoria, which I don't think is little, has the ability to have a Barron's top financial advisor in their city. So I'm more proud for Victoria than I am for Kenny French, is that we have that kind of a wealth here, and people that invest and in business. It's to me, it's an honor that we have somebody from Victoria like that. And it's because of it. Mrs. French would say it's because I have such good staff. I've got such good clients. It's hard to make Kenny French look good. So,
no, I like what you said, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to recognize it. Because again, we've got students on this call who are like, "Oh, it's just Victoria. Victoria has nothing," and you got to realize Victoria does have gems like this that other big cities do, and we're very blessed. And again, Kenny, it is a reflection of the people in this community, the interactions, more so than just you. It's what you do with human beings that makes that difference. Kenny, I'm going to end with just having your contact info there, because I know we might have additional follow-ups, and maybe you even got some potential new clients, who knows, but you might have a lot of students who just want to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you, or just pick your brain. They're majoring in finance or business, and they're trying to figure it all out. And you've been such a great mentor for so many students, Kenny, for so many years. I hope some of our students will feel free to reach out to you and try to get your expertise on their own career paths and their own dreams and their own ambitions. But thank you for being that resource. I want to end by giving you, Kenny, the last word, and any last words of advice for everybody gathered here today. What would you like to share as just a parting word for everybody today?
I would, to your point earlier, Woodrow, I'd just say that there's no shortcuts. Do the work. Be curious. That's what employers look for. Hard work, being curious, constant learners. I don't know where I got that trait, but that really, to me, has been probably the biggest unique ability that I've taken that has helped me the most, is not thinking I know it all, but I'm just curious. I want to know more. And I think what that does for you is that keeps you humble. It keeps you grateful. And to me, that has really helped me throughout my career.
You're a true model of that, Kenny, and you live it. You don't just talk the words, but you walk the walk, and you live these words every day. So blessed to have you part of this gathering. We hope to have more interactions with you. I know we tired you out at UHB today. I think you were all over the place at UHB, but we'll try to space it out a little bit. But thank you so much for taking this time. I know you're so very busy, and we so appreciate this. And like I said, you might have some follow-up emails from students, staff, and faculty. We've got a lot of faculty and staff who like to do these co-curricular things. And they like to have someone like you in their classroom and maybe working on an assignment together where it's like a real world problem that you're facing. And we found that to be wonderful. And so I hope that there's faculty here on the call today that will feel free to reach out to Kenny, and maybe you can collaborate on something in the future.
Yeah,
but
I've got some real world problems that I could use some help on. Thank you.
Excellent. You've got a lot of great people here, I think, who would want to help you. Well, Well, thank you everybody for joining us. It's been such a wonderful hour with Kenny French. Please tell your friends about Bridge to Brilliance. Please tell a friend, a colleague, a student, whomever about what we do in this hour. And hopefully they'll join us next month and also in May. We're looking at having our city manager, Mr. Jesus Garza, as our May speaker. And then next month, we're hoping to have live from Hollywood, Miss Noelle Wells. I don't know if KJ went to school with Noelle at Memorial, but she, born and raised here, went to UT Austin, planned to, graduated, and then all of a sudden she's in Saturday Night Live. She's in Master of None, and now she's on the new Star Trek series Lower Decks. So she made her dreams come true. That's for sure. And we're looking forward to seeing her next month. So Kenny, thank you. God bless you. And we will hopefully see you and everyone soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye, and have a great afternoon.